Good evening and welcome to the Career Interest Assessment webinar. My name is Chris Miller. I am the WSU Global Campus Career Advisor, and I will be your host tonight to talk about the Career Interest Assessment experience. Hopefully you had a chance to complete the ONET Interest Profiler ahead of time and brought your results for this webinar, but if not, you'll still learn some important information that you can use to take the test in the future. And I will share a little bit of background information about this type of interest assessment and how you can use the results to further your career research, and just talk a little bit more about the different types, and then we will go from there. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box, and I will try to address them as I see them. And if I do miss anything, I will go back at the end. I'll take some time for some questions at the end and make sure I haven't missed anything that was in the chat box. So let us go ahead and get started. And thanks again for joining. So when I do any of these career development webinars, I like to just take a little bit of a brief pause and look at the overall career development process, or at least this is kind of a nice little snapshot of it. It's not all encompassing, but it's pretty good. I like that it's a circle. And it's not like a straight line of you do one thing and then you do the next and the next and the next, because people are, usually assessing different parts of this process at different times in their life and maybe reassessing it over and over. So this is something that for most people does happen over and over again, where they are, getting to know themselves, what they're interested in, what's important to them for work, what they're good at. And then maybe they're exploring a certain career path and perhaps change their mind at some time and re-explore. And then whenever someone is doing the job search, they've gone through some amount of decision making to kind of set their goals, and then of course taking action, starting the actual application process and interviewing process, connecting, networking with employers, and that taking action section. So tonight we're mainly in the yellow know yourself section. Well, actually, I'll say we're in the yellow and the green area there too. We're looking mainly at interests tonight. To some extent, you could say traits, but really just looking mostly at interests and how those relate to exploring options in that green section, and researching careers based on what you see, from your career assessments. But anytime you're interested in a given career, or maybe you're really not sure what you might want to pursue and you just want to kind of dive in to just start looking at different career options, I'll share some resources for that as well. So before you take any type of career test, it's important to remember the limitations. And these are some that are highlighted by Richard Bowles, who's the author of the iconic career development novel, What Color is Your Parachute? So a lot of these are taken from his companion website to that, jobhuntersbible.com. And so some that he wanted to highlight is that no test can fully measure you. It's important to let intuition be your guide. Try not to predetermine how you want the test to turn out. So if you have a certain career in mind, don't try to think, well, what would someone who's doing this job answer this? You're looking for clues and suggestions, and it's important to try out several different assessment types and not just rely on the results of one. So assessments put you in categories or groups, and so those who answered the test the same way that you did, because they deal in these overall categories, they don't really tell you what's unique about you, but rather end up describing your family. You are an INFP or an AES for this one, or you're a color of blue. A test can't tell you anything about you specifically, only describes that group, which you might be an outlier in that family. So most of the people who answered all the questions in the same way you did may be attracted toward a given career, but that doesn't mean you will, but the test will suggest that for you. It doesn't know that about you, and it never will. It can't see you. It can only see that group that your answers put you in. More about yourself than any test will. Treat no test outcome as gospel. Reject the summary that a test gives you if it doesn't feel right. Trust your intuition. But then again, if you really like the suggestions a test gives you, don't agonize about whether those are worth tracking down or not. Just further your research. You're never finished with a test until you've done some deep thinking about yourself. These assessments can be fun for some. Some people don't like them, but reading the results isn't enough. You're not done until you've thought about what distinguishes you from every other member of, that group that you might be put into, and what makes you unique. So with that knowledge, you can then set out to find the work that you were uniquely meant to pursue. That is what Richard Bowles would say about any kind of career assessment, things to keep in mind going into it. So these types of assessments, like the ONET Interest Profiler, the SDS, the Strong Interest Inventory, these types of career interest assessments are based on John Holland's typological theory, and they produce a 2 or 3 letter, or 4 sometimes, Holland code is what they're called. And I just wanted to share some information. Here's the Holland hexagon here. You'll see the RIASEC, RIASEC, and what those letters correspond to, and I'll just talk a little bit more about each section, but I just want to share a little bit of background about it also. And that Holland's typological theory stated that career choice is an expression of one's personality, and that people seek out occupational environments that will be congruent with their personalities. And that personality can be assessed by measuring likes and dislikes. And interest tests are more measures of general personality, which is not something we would say nowadays. This assessment was, or this theory was developed around World War II, and a lot of interest assessments, a lot of career assessments were developed for, soldiers returning from war. Congruence between personality and occupational environment leads to satisfaction, stability, and achievement. A given person's Holland code or type develops through the ages of 18 to 30, and that you can see these 6 different general personality types. So some of the other key concepts are calculus, consistency, and differentiation. And just to briefly explain those, calculus meaning the similarity relationship between the 6 types can be depicted by a hexagon, in which the most similar types are adjacent to each other and the least similar types are opposite of one another. So basically, all that means is that the characteristics that make up a given type, so let's say realistic are the doers, those characteristics are statistically similar to investigative, I, and conventional, C, because those are the ones that are adjacent. C is next to R, I is next to R. Whereas social is opposite of R on this hexagon, it's across from it. And so that just says that social and realistic have the least similar correlation statistically based on the characteristics that make up each part. And so that's how they built the hexagon. And then for someone's code that they get, depending on their interest and disinterest pattern, consistency means the extent to which an individual's code represents similar characteristics. So are your letters that you scored highest in closer to one another on the hexagon? Are you getting an RIA, for example? Are you getting an RCE, for example? So R next to C next to E. So that would mean you have high consistency. Compared to someone who has, like, let's say an RSA, R and S being the number 1 and 2 areas that they scored the highest in, R and S are opposite one another, are across from one another. That would be low consistency. And then lastly, differentiation is how well defined, differentiated, or peaked the personality pattern is. So when you look at the actual numbers, the scores, is it a flat pattern, or does it look like a little mountain pattern, like a bell curve? Did you, ideally, you have high interest in 1 or 2 areas and then it tapers off in the others. And so someone with high differentiation clearly knows what they want to focus on. They have that, where they're more focused, interested in 1 or 2 areas, and then it tapers off. Whereas someone with low differentiation is not so sure, has varied interests throughout the types. So it could be someone who either says they're interested in everything, then you would have, sure, you're scoring really high, but it's all a flat line up top. The number's going to be high on the chart. And someone who's not interested in anything, they're going to have also a flat line, just it's going to be low. And you can see why that would be difficult for someone when it comes to career choice, because they're interested in everything or they're not interested in anything. And so, there's no such thing as a good or bad Holland score. It's just based on a person's given interests or interests. If someone has more differentiation with it throughout these different areas, then yeah, they're likely going to have an easier time finding something that fits their interests compared to someone who really isn't so sure. That's all that means. So that's a little bit of background about Holland codes. So to explain the 6 types a little bit more in detail, And what I'm going to do is just talk about these 6 areas, give some examples of occupations and some typical traits of each one. And then at the end of that, if you want to know, potentially want to know more jobs that could be a good fit for your type, or just a little exercise to show how jobs change over time, you can go ahead and put your 3-letter score in the chat box. And again, that is, the 3 areas that you scored the highest in. And for some people, it could be really close in a couple. And when that's the case, what a career counselor or advisor would tell you is to pick the one that really resonates mostly for you, whichever one sounds like a better fit for you. So relying on your intuition, that one is likely going to be the better fit. So realistic. Some examples of occupational fields for realistic: computer engineering, forestry, surveyors, farmers. Some typical traits: mechanical and athletic abilities. Liking to work outdoors with tools and machines might be described as conforming, frank, hard-headed, honest, humble, materialistic, natural, normal, persistent, practical, shy, thrifty. Those are the doers. Investigative or investigative, I like to go back and forth. Biology, chemist, physicist, geologist, anthropologist, laboratory work, medical technician. Traits for that would be math and science abilities, like to work alone and solve problems, might be described as analytical, complex, critical, curious, independent, intellectual, introverted, precise, rational. Those are the thinkers. Artistic, the composers, musicians, stage directors, dancers, interior decorator, actor, writer. Artistic skill, enjoys creating original work, has good imagination, may be described as complicated, disorderly, emotional, idealistic, imaginative, impulsive, independent, introspective, nonconforming, and original. I think for some people, artistic and social are the ones where, well, especially artistic, I'll say, is that they'll get a 3-letter code and they'll say, I really don't think of myself as artistic. I don't see myself as that classic, having a classic interest in an artistic job. But it's because of those things like being, having a good imagination, being complicated, idealistic, imaginative. That can go along with other areas that don't necessarily mean that you're going to be a painter or a musician or something like that. But those are the creators. Social, so these are teachers, speech therapists, religious workers, counselors, clinical psychologists, nurses, for example. Typical traits: like to help, teach, and counsel people, may be described as cooperative, friendly, generous, helpful, idealistic, kind, responsible, sympathetic, understanding, and warm. Those are the helpers. Enterprising, the buyers, sports promoters, TV producers, business executives, people in sales, travel agents, supervisors, managers. Some traits would be leadership and public speaking ability. Interested in money, politics, likes to influence people, described as acquisitive, agreeable, ambitious, attention-getting, energetic, extroverted, impulsive, optimistic, self-confident, sociable. Those are the persuaders. Lastly, conventional. So bookkeeping, financial analyst, tax expert, banker, medical lab assistant is the conventional area. Typical traits: clerical and math abilities, like to work indoors and organize things, described as conforming, careful, efficient, orderly, persistent, practical, thrifty, unimaginative. So those are the organizers. So those give you some kind of some background a little bit more information about each specific type of the hexagon. So whichever one you scored, the highest in, that would be your most dominant area. That should be this chunk, this 1/6 of the hexagon that speaks mostly to you, that you most relate with. So I'll go ahead and take a look at the chat box here and just do this brief look at how jobs change over time. Is one of the reasons I like to do this. I just think it's interesting. What Holland would say also, when you're exploring your code, is the rule of full exploration means you look at all the permutations of your code. So for me, I'm an SEA, a social, enterprising, artistic. So if I'm exploring all the permutations of that, I'm looking at SAE, I'm looking at ESA, EAS, I'm looking at AES, or sorry, EAS and ESA. So, just mixing all the letters up to get the different permutations of your code is the best way to fully explore, jobs that might be relevant for you based on your Holland code. The ONET tool itself has good resources to compare jobs, internships. I'm going to show, or sorry, jobs or internships to your code, but I'll share some of the resources too. So just heading into the chat box here. So that AES is going to be similar to mine. I'll just put mine in there too. So I'll look up AES and SEI. And so again, with this tool, so what I'm doing is I'm looking at what's called the Occupations Finder, and it's a document created by John Holland decades ago and updated many times throughout the years. This one I probably got last about 13 years ago. So it's there will be likely some jobs in here that don't even really exist anymore, just to highlight how things change over time, I think is interesting, but also to look at any other potential job options that fit a given code that might not have been included with the ONET interest profiler, because it's not the same as this one, the SDS that I'm reading out of. And this is really just an abridged take on a larger thing called the Dictionary of Occupational Titles, which used to go down to the library to go access to see, thousands of jobs and how they fit with Holland codes and to share information. But now we don't have to do that, obviously, because of this wonderful thing called the internet. But so I will look at AES, and there might not always be a match in here because of what I talked about with calculus, consistency, and differentiation. So not knowing exactly what the scores are, it's mostly consistency. How close are your letters on the hexagon? So AES, SEI, I'm just going to jump back here to look at those. So AES is going to have high consistency, medium to high consistency, because they're all clumped together. SEI is going to be about the same, honestly. Now, E and I are across from one another, and I don't know exactly what the scores were for those areas, but since S and E is what it's leading with, it would be also in that moderate to potentially high consistency. So just meaning, like I said before, likely your interests are more correlated, so likely it would be technically potentially easier to find a career match for someone in that situation. Not always the case, but that is the suggestion based on the consistency there. Okay, AES, let me go into the occupations finder here. REIA, REIA, AES. I can do a permutation if there's not a good fit for it here. AES, there are plenty for AES. Okay, so some examples of more specific career matches based on all three letters. AES, audiovisual production specialist, columnist, critic, book editor, newspaper editor, publication editor, different kinds, poet, account exec, archivist, cartoonist, choral director, choreographer, color expert, comedian, orchestra conductor. Trying to see if there are any here that don't really exist anymore. Sometimes there are, sometimes they're not. There's something called a copyist for garments. I don't know textiles that well. Maybe that exists still, maybe it doesn't. Let's see. Artist and repertoire manager. Looks like most of these still exist. Continuity writer, creative director, director of photography, film, videotape editor, news editor, editorial writer. So a lot of editing, as you can see. Interior designer, music director, narrator, printmaker, graphic art, sales rep. It's fun when they're very specific like that. Scenic arts supervisor. I don't know specifically what that means, but that's probably a theater job. That's pretty cool. So that is AES, lots of those. And let me look for SEI, SEC, S being the fourth one on there. SEI, plenty for SEI too. An insurance attorney, correctional agency director, college or university faculty member, hearing officer, not sure what that is exactly, political scientist, financial institution president, school psychologist, a research contract supervisor, coordinator of rehab services, dietetic tech, public schools director, historian, labor standards director, loan officer, computer operations manager, nursing, park naturalist, rec leader, school principal, superintendent of schools. So all those school jobs and the school management jobs are there in SEI as well. Let me scroll down, see if I missed any. Oh, I'm hitting the wrong thing. Down. Oh, for the scores there. Yes, oh, that worked out well. SEI being 18, 15, 12. So the SDS, the scores are a little bit different than the occupational outlook, or I'm sorry, with the self-directed search. So I don't know what the rule is. I know the SDS is the rule of 8. If the score's within 8, then they could be considered almost the same. It's not 8 with ONET. I don't remember, but I bet S and E are somewhat interchangeable, but A and S are 6 apart. So I bet those are pretty well differentiated. So yeah, those are pretty, I'd say pretty moderately differentiated, not high, not low, for the ONET interest profiler. So those are some of those areas. I was surprised. Sometimes I'll read one off and I'll say a job title that they're always job titles. I don't know what they mean because I don't have that kind of a memory, but there's just some that you know right away that, oh, that job doesn't exist anymore because of technology. So I think it's just interesting to see over time, over a little bit of time, just like 10 years, how some jobs can become obsolete. And that's one of the important things to consider when you're researching careers. Anytime you're interested in a career or from any kind of career interest or any kind of career assessment, what a great segue of mine. We click back over and talk about using some of these scores, or really just anytime you want to further your career research, some things that you can do to go further, to look at what it actually takes to do those jobs, find out more information about those jobs. These are just some other resources for exploring your Holland Code results. You can just Google search Holland Code matches to careers, anything like that, and that'll pull up any relevant resources for that. And I was just reading here out of the SDS Occupational Finder. There's also an Educational Opportunity Finder to match your given code with an academic major, which can be interesting too. But I want to talk about right now exploring careers. So you go through these tests, maybe you're highlighting, maybe you're narrowing down some jobs you want to research. Maybe you're not really sure, so you're expanding, you're broadening your search to say, well, I should look more into other areas because I'm not really positive on what I want to pursue. Two resources that I would recommend utilizing are the Occupational Outlook Handbook and Labor Market Insights. So the Occupational Outlook is at bls.gov /OOH. I will go there first, and then I will show you how to access the Labor Market Insights tool that we use at WSU. So bear with me one moment while I jump over here to the Occupational Outlook Handbook, which is a section of the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. This used to be an actual handbook that you would see in a library or your career center. Now is obviously housed online and is updated regularly to forecast a job or a job cluster for how it is growing or declining over the next about 10 years. So that's how it gets its Outlook name. And there are a lot of different ways to use the Occupational Outlook Handbook, OOH. You can look at different occupational groups. You can see here on the left side, you can search different ways by median pay, training. There's an A through Z index, so you can just look alphabetically at different types of careers. But for this, I tend to just look at these featured occupations, and I will refresh my screen to see if there's anything that pops up that's interesting or relevant to something that a global campus student might be majoring in, which could be a news analyst, reporter, and journalist for communications. Not likely that. Let's go environmental engineering technologists and technicians, because that is one of the academic major areas we have. So I will click on view profile, and you'll just see this first summary page that kind of highlights everything that you'll learn here. But the next tab here will be what they do. What is the work environment like for an environmental engineering technologist technician? How does one become one? What is the pay like for people doing this job? So you can see very important work research information, work value information. Job outlook, how does it get its, is it growing or declining over the next 10 years? Is it about the same? Some similar occupations and more info. So what do these people do? So you can see some of the duties here. Another nice thing about the Occupational Outlook Handbook is for someone who's building a resume without having the experience. Maybe they're using it for an internship search, or they're going into something entry level, and even if you are established and you're just trying to find some better wording for your resume, there's all this great resume wording jargon right here for a given career area. So what are the duties for these environmental careers? Setting up, test, operate, modify equipment used to prevent or clean up environmental pollution, maintain project records and computer program files, collect and analyze samples such as groundwater for monitoring pollution or treatment, review documents to ensure that they are complete and conform to reporting requirements, review work plans to schedule activities, arrange for the disposal of asbestos, lead, other hazardous materials, et cetera, et cetera. You can see more about what the job entails. Another thing with the work environment, they'll break it down. I guess they didn't do it for this one, did they? Oh, they will under how to become one. You can see the different kind of like industrial sectors here, how to become one. So what kind of education is required? They should take science and math courses in high school to prepare for a post-secondary program in engineering technology. Some kind of specific accreditation looks like is available. And then what I was looking for on the other page, important qualities here, another place where you can find information for a resume. So kind of instead of just saying, I have strong communication skills, critical thinking skills, problem solving skills, what does that mean for this specific career area? And so this is something that they will give you specific information about a career area, for each different job or job cluster that you're researching. So what does it mean, communication skills for these environmental techs? So when working on teams, they must listen attentively and convey information to others. Environmental engineers and technicians implement plans designed by engineers. They must be able to resolve issues that arise, such as unexpected findings during field work, is an example for problem solving skills. So something that's more specific about this job area. What is the pay like? So you can see the different breakdown for, again, different industrial areas. So the median was just over 50 in May 2022. What's the outlook? It's projected to show little or no change through 2032. So over the next 9 years, it's an area of that's holding steady in terms of growth. It's not rapidly growing. It's not rapidly declining. So it's not something that's necessarily a boom area. There might not be, plentiful job opportunities, but it's not an area that's disappearing also. State and area data is usually less relevant for people doing career research, but it's something to explore. Similar occupations is nice if you find a job you're interested in, but maybe it doesn't pay enough, or there's like a lot of education or certification required, and it's just not something that you are thinking about pursuing. You can go ahead and explore some other areas here that are relevant. More information is often overlooked, but it's a really great place for someone to start the networking part of any career area. So, so someone could check out this ABET was noted in either the how to become one. It was how to become one. They talk about that specific certification. So you can really connect to the network, professional organization association of these people doing this job. Find out how, maybe run an informational interview to find out how other people got started in that job. Just really gathering information that you could use, networking, hopefully maybe getting some job leads that way. The more information tab is a really great area for any career researching, any specific career cluster as well. So again, that is bls.gov/OOH, Occupational Outlook Handbook. You can always just Google OOH, Occupational Outlook Handbook. The other one I wanted to show you was Labor Market Insights, and going directly there's probably not the easiest way to do it. Now you can do it. I would say it's easier just to go to ascc.wsu.edu. It is the main academic advising and career advising center for the main campus, but there's a lot of career resources here that are relevant for all WSU students, even global campus students, even those who have already had years of experience. Under building career skills, the drop-down menu here, and also finding jobs and internships. If you go to any of these build career skills areas, you can access labor market insights. I will just go to, since we're talking about assessment, let's do explore your interests self-assessment here. You can scroll all the way down, or you can click on one of these tabs here. You can see labor market insights right there. But for any of these pages, they're going to have these articles that some of them are written by WSU career advising people, and some of them are third-party career development articles. So you can just kind of see if anything is interesting or relevant for you. But you can either, like I said before, click that tab at the top, or just scroll all the way down past different resources. There are some other career assessment resources you could do as WSU student, like Focus 2. So you can further this that you've done already and try some other areas like work values, work personality, work skills assessment. So check out Focus 2 also if this has been a meaningful exercise for you. But labor market insights, like I said before, you can just click that button or scan all the way down to show you kind of how it differs from the Occupational Outlook Handbook. It starts very simply and broadly, and then you can narrow it down geographically. So I'm going to select an industry. Let's see, it's because we were looking at environmental. Let's see if I can find it easily. I might not be able to. If not, I'll just look at something for, let's go science. Yeah. Okay, for if I can't find it here, I'll just do a different thing that's relevant for global campus students. Here we go. Chemicals, mechanical, civil. Let's go. Here we go. Energy, that's more engineering though. Industrial. Some of these are likely irrelevant anyway. There we go. Life and environmental sciences. Okay, let's look at environmental economists. That combines two different areas for global campus students. So let's do it. So I've gone from industry. I've picked a specific job. You'll see these occupation descriptions, employment trends, top employers, educational levels, annual earnings. Again, stuff that's really similar to the Occupational Outlook Handbook. But if you want to look at some core competencies and job titles that are going to be more relevant to you where you're at geographically, then you can go take it down from nationwide and filter it down. So I'm going to go Washington. I'm based out of Seattle. I'm just going to do that because it'll have employers there. So King County. Again, description for this work, right? Technical documents or academic articles to communicate study results or economic forecasts, and on down. Some employment trends. So this one, again, it's not the same job as I was looking at OOH, but this one's expected to grow plus more than about 13.5% over the next 10 years. So this is an area of growth. So a safe area to consider pursuing because of the growth over the next 10 years. Some of those top employers, they don't have it for this one. They will normally have that. Education levels, split between a doctorate and a master's degree. Annual earnings. Let's see, 108, because this is going to be in the graduate level there. Technical skills relevant for it, no data for this one. This one's a very specific occupational, looks like. And the level of importance for each of these skills, and then job titles. Again, like I said, no job titles for this one. Let's pick a different one. Let me check in the chat just to see if there's anything there. Thank you for sharing the link. I appreciate that. Okay, let's go. Let's get out of this industry. Something will definitely give us. Let's go human services. Let's go for those interested in becoming rehab counselors. Stick with Washington King. So now let's go to those top employers. And maybe we have an actual list like I was expecting to see the first time. So you can see who's hiring King County. Top employers. It's going to be a bachelor degree, making up most of it. Yeah, that makes sense for rehab counselors. Earnings. Do we see the trend? I want to see the trend for this. It's slow growth, about 7% or plus 7%. That's not bad at all. Core competencies and how important it is for each area, and then job title. So again, this will be looking at things like those similar occupations in the occupational ELK handbook, but really just more specific. It's more helpful when you're doing, Google searches for looking for specific job titles when you're actually in the job searching process. So this was labor market insights, excuse me, and another great career researching tool to use whenever you finish career assessment or whenever you're interested in exploring a career a little bit more. And if you're interested in connecting with a professional association to find out more information and starting networking, to find about who's hiring, to find out about employment trends, what you should be putting on a cover letter, what you should be addressing in an interview, look at those professional associations in the Occupational Outlook Handbook. Two really good solid tools for career researching. All right, jumping back over. And I believe, looking at other career assessments, I just showed you that Focus 2, that's a nice tool that kind of looks at some of these different areas. So the strong interest inventory and self-directed search are going to be similar to what you've done with the ONET interest profiler. There's, actual skill, like physical skill assessments like this one, and a mechanical aptitude test. But there are, self-interest assessment or, interests, career interest. No, so career skills, self-assessments also. Those are the words I'm trying to find. There are work values assessments, which I think are really helpful, that can seem really simple, but when you're thinking about, most people don't ever have like a perfect job that they want to do for the rest of their entire life. I would say the vast majority of people wouldn't say that that's the case for them, and that they've changed their career interests many times over time. So work values is one of those things that kind of becomes steady throughout one's career, looking at all the years that they work. That basically meaning what's important to you in your job: pay, recognition, autonomy, benefits, things like that. So those are the things that the work values assessments can identify and help you explore careers to see if it'd be a good fit based on really meeting those core values. Personality assessments like the Myers-Briggs can be helpful in different ways, not so much for career exploration, but for more about, assessing a work environment, figuring out how to best communicate with people you work with. That's what those personality assessments are really better with. And then, there are fewer and fewer of those social media assessments that used to be ubiquitous. So that's a good thing, because they were mostly there just to steal your information and sell it. But so it's just kind of a thing I just leave on there as a word of caution, but it's not really a big thing like it used to be. But that should bring us there toward the end. Thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions for me, let you know. I'll hang out for a little bit here. Email is the easiest way to get a hold of me, cmiller66@wsu.edu. I am your Global Campus Career Advisor. So for any career development questions you have, shoot me an email and I will send you the intake to start the process. There is the career support website, online.wsu.edu. There are different ways to get to the career services part. And then also the career guide blog. I try to post about weekly some kind of virtual event that's happening for Global Campus students. That is a career development event of some sort. So most recently it's been promoting this webinar, but also this Thursday for Carson business students, there's a virtual internship fair where there's more information posted in Handshake, but you can just go to online.wsu.edu to look at the blog to see more information about that. Again, thank you so much for joining me. I will go ahead and look in the chat box, see if there are any questions, but if not, have a great night.